In December 2018, WordPress 5 was released and it introduced a brand new block editor. It changed the editing environment quite a lot. It got some fairly mixed reactions initially, but it's come a long way in the last year and a half or so. So if you're a little bit stuck with understanding how the new editor works, or just want to see what WordPress can do these days, you're in the right spot. Let's look at that today. G'day, I'm Jason Foss. What we're going to look at today is we'll break it down into three sections. So first of all, we're just going to take an overview look at the new editing experience in WordPress, the blocks editor. Second, we're going to start putting some example WordPress blocks on the page just to see how we can build that out. And then in the third section, we'll look at how you can supercharge the whole experience with some plugins. And really, there are lots and lots of different block types available to you to use. So let's get started. Alright, so for the record here, I'm using WordPress 5.5 and the Astra Pro theme. So if there's something that's not exactly the same in any of your screens, that could be a difference there. But what we'll do first, I've just got a very basic plain vanilla page here. And if I click edit on this page here, this is what a WordPress editing screen used to look like. So you basically had a rectangle in there and you had some formatting controls and you could add media to it. But there wasn't a whole lot of control here available to you. Most of the way the site looked was really dependent upon the theme that you had installed. It controlled a lot of things. You could really only edit the content within a section of the page for the most part. The new editing experience changes all of that though. So this is what it looks like with the new blocks editor. So if I was to come and edit this same page with the new blocks editor, first of all, it's putting it inside of what it calls a classic block. So the first thing that we want to do to make use of that is convert that to blocks, which means I now have individual paragraphs here that I can control and I can start inserting other things into them. Now, often one of the first things that WordPress will do is load this full screen view, which I am not a particular fan of. So I'm going to hit those little three dots up there, untick full screen mode, and it'll take me back to this view. Depending on the size of your screen though, the other view may be preferable, so you can just come up here and turn that back on if you wish. And for the sake of ease on the screencast, I might actually leave it like this for now. So as I mentioned before, what we've got here is instead of a single rectangle of stuff, we've got three individual paragraph blocks here on the page now. Now I can insert other blocks into this page. I've got a plus up here, which will then reveal a whole bunch of different options available to me. So a paragraph, a heading, list, tables. Tables used to be a real headache in WordPress, but there's a table block there now for them. Images, photo galleries, other different layout options, buttons, columns, widgets and embeds. There's a bunch of different options here. So I'll just put a heading on here to add a subheading. And I can then move that around in here with those controls. I could also, if I hover over a section in here, add a block in between these two. So if I wanted to add an image, it's not there at the moment. So I've got two options. I can either type image because I know what I'm looking for, or I can click browse all and that will show me them over the side here. So let's grab an image there. I can upload something new or I'll choose something that I uploaded earlier. And I've now got the image in between those sections where I had the plus there before. I could also hit the plus then and grab an image and insert another one under there. And at this point in time, if I don't like where that is, I can move it down the page. So I've now got subheading there, paragraph, and another image in that section of the page there. So instead of having just a single rectangle of stuff, a block is a particular type of content and we can insert that anywhere on the page and move them around and adjust them so that we can get the layout how we want. Now, in terms of some of the control of some of these blocks, if I hit this little gear icon up here, if you don't already see this, depending on the size of your screen, that gear will show and hide that. I've got a couple of tabs here. So the first one is the document, which is what you used to have seen in the right-hand side of your WordPress editing screen there. revisions, featured image, page attributes, and some other settings that might appear down the right hand side of that screen. Revisions is pretty useful actually. A lot of people don't realize this is there, but every time you make a change to a page, WordPress keeps a record of those changes. So if I've done something here, it's like, oh, I don't want that, hit revisions. Oh, actually, let me just update this page first. Hit revisions now, and we can see I can scroll back through the history of this page. Red areas for things that I've removed, green areas for things that I've added. So if I want to take this page back to the way it was before, I can choose the revision I want, hit restore, and it'll take the page straight back to the way it was. So if you are making changes to a page, you don't need to be scared of breaking anything, because if you do, just jump into revisions, drag it back to how it was before you started, and hit restore. I'm just going to return to the editor now. The featured image, a lot of things will use this as a thumbnail for the page. If you're trying to post a link to this page on Facebook, often that featured image will be the image that shows up in the Facebook newsfeed. So depending on the theme and how the site's set up, this may be important or it may not be. If you're publishing blog posts, pretty much always you need to worry about a featured image. On pages, sometimes you do and sometimes you don't, but that's there anyway. But the main thing that's new is the block tab over here. So if we move from document back to block, this changes depending on what block I'm editing at the time. So this is a paragraph block, and I can tell that because I've got the paragraph symbol up here, and it tells me up here it's a paragraph. I can change the size of the text or put a custom size in. I can change some colors. Drop cap's another feature that you can use. It just makes the first letter of the paragraph quite big. Doesn't get used that often, but the setting's there. But if I were to then click the image, it's telling me there that I'm now editing an image block, and I've got a couple of different styles there. Alternative text I can add in, the size, and some other controls there. So what happens over here, and just as another example, if I click inside the heading, click inside the heading, I'm now a heading block. I've got some controls pertaining to that. So these ones are fairly simple. If you start adding tables or columns, or there's some other more complicated blocks that we'll look at a little bit later, the context of what you can control in here, learn to speak English, what you can control in here is dependent upon what you've chosen, what block you've got selected over in the main panel here. Now, there's two places you can look at controls for blocks. So we just looked at this right-hand panel over here, but you'll notice if I've got this paragraph, or I'm clicked inside this paragraph here, I've got these controls up here. So that to move the block up and down on the page. We've got alignment options here, and because I've got some text, I've got bold italics. I can make some text into a link. I've got some other options here, and then this guy over here, I can remove the block completely, duplicate the block if I want to repeat it a bit further down the page, and add to reusable blocks here. We'll look at that a bit later. That's really handy if you have to duplicate this on multiple pages. So in terms of editing blocks, if I just click the image, we'll see I've got different controls here. I've sort of got some different alignment options, making it a link, cropping the image, replacing the image, and those same controls there. So in terms of if you're trying to adjust the settings of a particular block, you've got your toolbar across the top for quick reference, and you've also got the blocks panel on the right hand side there to adjust some of those settings. And that's basically the way you control in each individual block down the page. All right, so if we were to now start putting some of these blocks together to build out our page, we'll have a look at how that comes out. So I'm just going to click Update here, View Page down here. So we can see here's the image that I've inserted here in between that paragraph and my subheading, and these are the changes that I've just made now. So if I come back to Edit Page, with the image, I think I'm going to make that a full width and expand that out. So if I click Update now, we can see that image now runs edge to edge. So if you're using a newer theme that's designed to run on WordPress 5, so something that you would have had set up in the last year or thereabouts, this should be supported. If you're using the block editor inside of an older theme or an older WordPress installation, sometimes the full width will only be the column width, and that's just the way that the older themes were set up. But a newer theme that's designed to run on WordPress 5 should support this for you okay. But let's throw some other things in here as well. So I'm actually just going to remove that block for now. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a cover image in here instead. So I'm just going to, I know what I'm looking for, so I'll just type cover. Media library, I'm going to grab that one. And I can now type some text over the top of this image. And if I press enter, in fact, I could also, the plus button's a bit hard to see here on dark backgrounds, but it is there. I could also put a button here instead. Do this thing. And I could link that somewhere if I wanted to. I don't actually have anywhere to link it to at the moment. I'm going to click that. Whoops, pop out of there. And I'm going to align that into the center. So if we were to update that now, and whoop, did I click that? View page, there we go. So we can now see that I've got my text and my button sitting over the top of this background image. And that's okay, but we can do some more stuff with that. So I'm going to go back to edit page, and I'm going to click the image, and I'm going to make this full width as well. And I'm going to give it a fixed background. So if I update that now, and look at that, see how the background is staying where it is as I'm scrolling past it. So if we just rewind for a minute, I've done a couple of things here that I haven't introduced yet. So what we've got here is some blocks inside of other blocks. So you can actually nest blocks. So I'm editing some paragraph text here, and the size has been set here. And then I've got a button block in here. And I've got some button controls over here. And we can see down the bottom here, the hierarchy of the things that I've got nested. So there's my paragraph. It's sitting inside of a cover block. And then I've got my individual button block here. Is sitting inside of a button set, because we're getting to add multiple buttons beside each other to this if we wanted to, which is sitting inside of my cover image, which is then in my document. So if I was to click that, we can see we've got some controls over here. Go to buttons, don't have any particular controls over here, but I am now controlling the alignment of those buttons. Come back to cover, I've then got the cover image selected. I could replace the background if I wanted to, and control that over here. So you can actually get reasonably complicated if you want to in terms of nesting blocks, some blocks inside of other blocks to create the layouts that you want. I'm actually going to turn fixed background off for a minute. Often when you insert a photo in here, fixed backgrounds just don't kind of work. Something ends up falling off the screen that you don't want to, that's important. Especially when you start looking at this, you know, on the laptop versus the mobile phone and so on. So there'll only be certain circumstances where I turn that on, but something that is then useful, if I've got this turned off, so the image now moves as I scroll, I can actually control where the most important part of the image is. So if there were people in this photo, I'd want to put that focus point on their faces or in the center of where their faces are. So we can see that as I'm moving this around, I'm controlling that. So if I start to look at this on a phone and it has to crop it vertically to fit it in, or crop it horizontally to fit it in the, you know what I mean, crop it so that it fits onto the narrower screen, it will hang on to the bit and crop off this extraneous stuff on the end here. So make sure you set your focus point to where it needs to be, click update, view page, and that point there will be in the middle of the photo regardless of how wide the screen goes. All right, so let's come back here now. So we've inserted a cover image in there. This is often the kind of thing that will be at the top of the page, so I'm actually going to move this up. So that's the first thing at the top of the page. We've got an introductory paragraph. We've then got our subheading. I'm going to remove this photo instead. Remove block. And instead I'm going to put a gallery in here. So let's go to my media library. So I can, if I've already uploaded a photo, it's here in my media library. If I need to upload more, I can either click select files and go to a folder on my computer and upload them, or I can drag and drop multiple images onto here and it'll upload them all at the same time. So I'm going to choose these three. They've all got ticks next to them. New gallery. At this point in time, I can put them in a different order, add some captions to them if I want, and insert the gallery, and there is my photo gallery there. So if I update that now and click View Page, so we've got our cover image up the top, moving down into our gallery, and that'll just lay a series of photos out nice and neatly. And similarly to the way I was saying before, if I've got a gallery selected, then over here I've got some specific controls around that. How many columns are in my photo gallery? Is it going to let me make this smaller? It is, yep. So I can change the number of columns and it will adjust the layout of the gallery to fit. Whether I crop the images or not, and you can see these images have slightly different aspect ratios, so cropping them just makes them a bit tidier. We can send them to link to the media file, which means if I click it, I'll get a bigger version to look at. And I can also add new images to it here and remove individual images by selecting it and removing it there. Let's click update on that again now. And one last thing to finish this page off. If I press enter here, if I start typing, I'm typing a new paragraph, but I'll click the plus here and I'll put a table in. Tables in WordPress traditionally have been really troublesome. So I'm going to go 2 columns, 5 rows, create table, and there is my table. I actually might add a header section to this so I can and I can start typing contents into these rows. I can set them to fixed cells so they won't dynamically adjust the width depending on what's in there. I can also set zebra stripes on my table instead of having it laid out like that. And these are all just standard default controls built into WordPress now. There's no special plugins, there's no special formatting required. We can just get this on the page. So I'll just type some junk into these cells here so we can have a look at it. So if I was to update this now and click View Page, so that's the page title, it's there. My cover image with my paragraph text and my button nested inside the cover image. Paragraph, heading, another paragraph, my photo gallery, and you can see these are now clickable. Another paragraph and my table laid out. And I can drag these around and shift the order of them on the page, and they're all just part of the way the WordPress editor works now. Just to sort of reinforce that, let's move that above that last paragraph and update that. And I'll show you one more thing here. Now, you see this cover image here and the opening paragraph are actually really close to each other. And there's reasons for that, because sometimes you want your elements to be close together like that. So in this case we don't. That's a little bit squishy, so I'm going to come down here and hit the plus in between those blocks, and I'm going to put a spacer in. So I'm typing these things because I know what I'm looking for, but again, if it doesn't appear in here, which is dynamically populated with the most recent things you've used, I'm going to go browse all and see what's available to me, and there's a spacer. Let's just click that to show my sidebar again. So by default, that's 100 pixels high. That might be okay, but I could also make it, let's just make it 50. Okay, don't you love live demos where nothing works properly? Let's go 50. There we go, 49. Oh, that's close enough. So if I update that now, we'll see I've just added a little bit of space there. On the edit screen, I can click that and it grays it out for me, but it doesn't show up like that on the website. It's just there so we can see that it's selected like that. So they're the main built-in WordPress blocks that you can use to build out a page. We've nested some blocks. Actually, I'm going to show you one more before we move on. That's pretty neat. So I'm going to add some columns in here, and I'm going to go 3, which is giving me 3 columns here. Now I can then sort of nest some contents inside these columns. So I could click in there and add a paragraph or a heading or whatever else, but I'm going to add a cover, and I'm going to choose an image, option 1. I'm I'm going to click in this second cell and grab another cover and a different image, option 2, another cover, image, option 3. So if I update that now and have a look at this page, we'll see how I've laid out those. Now these are cover images, so in the same way as this cover image up here, I could have a headline and a paragraph and then a button to take some action. I could do the same thing inside these guys. So if you've got some options down the page and you want to display them nice and visually, the background image is here with some text and some buttons over the top is a nice way to lay it out. And if I was to just pretend to be a phone for a minute, as I scroll down, we'll see here, instead of stacking them side by side, it's stacked them one on top of the other. I've got, I could probably add a spacer in between those things for that vertical stacking, but I won't worry about that right now. But you can see how it will stack them vertically on a phone, and you can tinker with some controls and some spacing if you need to. And actually one more thing with cover images, we can see some of these look a little bit dark. If I click over here, that's set to 50%. I can actually control that, make it darker or lighter. If I'm going to make it lighter, there might be some instances where I would want to change that text to black rather than white. The default there at 50% on that darker color just makes the white text stand out on the page a bit easier to read. But that's just another example of the contextual controls on the right hand side here after you've selected a particular block. Now I'm just going to click update on that for a minute. Let's say, for example, that this was a set of 3 services that I wanted to add onto the website, and I wanted to include this on a number of different pages. So I'd have my service names here and maybe a sentence summary and then a button underneath it linking to that services page. And instead of having to then repeat this on every single page, if I click and use the status bar down here to click columns, so I've now selected the whole column set, keeping in mind that we've got, in this case, paragraph text sitting on a cover image, sitting in a single column inside of a set of 3 columns. I can then turn this into a reusable block. So I'm going to do that now, and I'm going to call this 3 options and save it. Now, to show you how that works, I'm going to click update, I'm going to go view page, I'm going to go to a different page, and we're back here to just a blob of text. So I'm going to click edit page here, still set out still the single classic editor block, so I'm going to click that and convert to blocks. And then in here, if I go browse all, I've got this now tab over here called reusable. 3 options, bang, there are the 3 service options with everything that I set up on them previously. The buttons, the links, everything. I can just drop this on any page that I want to, click update, view page, and there it is. Now if I wanted to change a link or some text, I can click in here, and because this is controlled now globally, I'll need to click edit on this, click option 1, do a thing. I'm going to center align that, and I could also put a button under there as well. I won't at the moment, but I'm going to save that reusable block. Let's just update that page so I can get back here. So we can see on the services page, it's got this extra bit of text in. If I come back to the home page and scroll down, it's updated there as well. So when you save something as a reusable block, on any page that it exists, if you edit it and make a change and save it, it then repeats throughout the entire site. So if a service description changed, or you wanted to change a photo or something else like that, you only have to do it once and it updates everywhere. Really handy feature. Something else that's brand new actually in WordPress 5.5, which is the version I'm using here. So I haven't really played with this yet, but I'm going to come down here and I'm going to click plus in here and browse all, is patterns. So what we've got now is a series of patterns that you can drop on and then edit from there. They're good starting points. So we've got 2 buttons, 3 buttons, set of columns, columns with some images. So I'm going to click that, for example, and that has inserted then this pattern. 2 columns with images at the top. I can then go and replace that image with something else. Open Media Library, put something else in there. Do the same thing over here, replace that with one of my photos. Could go through and edit the text and do what I need to do. But instead of having a repeating block where it's exactly the same everywhere, your pattern lets you insert common design starting points, I suppose, that you can then change one page to the next. So I might want to run this layout on multiple pages, but I don't want the content to be the same on each page. Inserting a pattern instead of a reusable block would be the way to make that happen. All right, so we've been through some standard WordPress blocks here. So without any plugins or anything, basically all I've got here is WordPress installed and the Astra theme sitting on it. That's all I've done here. But you can see I've got a fair bit of control over what I do with this. And I can experiment with columns and nesting other elements inside of columns and creating a lot of, you can create fairly complex layouts without requiring anything fancy installed. But there are a lot of plugins available that give you a whole lot of extra blocks that you can use that really supercharge what you're doing. There's lots and lots and lots of them. I'm not going to look at them all today because your head will explode, but the main one that I'm using at the moment is called, what's it called? Ultimate Add-ons, Ultimate Add-on Blocks, UAB. Let me just install it now and we'll have a quick look at it. All right, this is the one here, the Gutenberg blocks ultimate add-ons for Gutenberg. Gutenberg was the code name for this editor before its release. A lot of people still call it that. It's generally just known as the blocks editor now, just to get some jargon out of the way. So I'm going to install this plugin. All right, so let's come back to pages here, and let's just grab the About Us page, for example. So again, I've still got the classic editor here, so I'm going to convert this to, convert to blocks. That's what we want. Now, if I click the plus here and go browse all, we'll see if I scroll down past these ones, we've then got a new section called Ultimate Add-on Blocks. And there is a whole bunch of different things in here that we can do to give us a lot more functionality with what we're doing. So let's start off with a section. Where's my section gone? Okay, you're probably looking at this going, there it is, went straight past it. Section, there it is, okay. So I'm going to put a section in here. Let's show the controls over the right-hand side. So as we were looking at this before, the controls over the right-hand side for the native WordPress blocks were fairly simple. There wasn't a million controls around. But with something like this, all of a sudden there is. So I'm going to go, let's go full width, inherit the inner width from the theme. Spacing, I'm going to make this, I'm going to put about, not quite that much. Yeah, let's say 300 pixels there. I think I figured out what was going on before. The batteries in my keyboard have gone flat. Let's try using a laptop keyboard instead. Oh, no, maybe they didn't. All right, so I've just added some padding top and bottom to that, and we can see it's made that way taller. I'm going to leave those other things alone for the moment. Background, now I've got lots more options here. I can add a gradient, a background image, or a background video as well. Background videos can make a very nice effect, but just be mindful of making sure that the video file size is as small as you can make it and still have it looking reasonable, because that's a lot of extra megabytes that all of a sudden your page has to download without warning. So just be mindful of that. So again, this is a section, so I've set the background here. In here, I can then add, I might add a heading. Here it is over here, so I'm going to grab that. I'm going to make this white, and I think I might center it and update. and view the page. Now, you might look at that and go, well, that's not doing all that much more than a cover image. Well, in this configuration, no, it's not really. But if I was looking at a background video or something else, then it certainly would be doing a lot more. But I'm going to show you something else pretty cool just now. So I'm going to move this up so it's the first thing on the page. Now, if I go back to the document section here, I'm going to make this actually full width. And I'm going to make sure that this is, yeah, back to the document section. You may or may not be able to do this depending on the theme you're using. In the Astra Pro one you can. I'm going to go transparent header enabled and update that and view the page. All of a sudden what we've done is pushed it right up to the top of the screen. So, you know, we could have our logo and our menu, instead of being on a solid coloured strip, whether that's white or whatever colour it is, the image is then starting right at the top of the page there. And as we come down, so I probably still want another spacer in there just to move that away a little bit. And drag that up a teeny bit. And then we can start adding some of these other things down the page. Let's have a look at adding a, come down here, a Google map is pretty neat because they can be a bit funny sometimes if you try and do it using other methods. There it is, Google Map. So let's come over here and let's put in the address of where we need it to be. So there we go, we've located it there. We've got the address there. I can adjust the zoom level out or in, and change the height of the map itself and update that. And I can get that in without having to worry about a lot of the dancing with Google that you have to do these days with API keys and the like. The post and page grid is another nice one as well. So if we come down here, post grid. So if I had some news posts in here, I can add these in a nice grid without having to worry about too much, but I could also add other pages in here as well. So you see before we added some columns and put some cover images in, and then could add some buttons to link to some pages. Using a block like this would let you just automate that process a little bit and it will pre-fill them. It's a little bit ugly the way it is at the moment, but I've got a lot of controls down here in terms of the content, whether I'm showing a featured image, which we looked at before, what the read more link looks at, typography being fonts, colors, spacing, a whole bunch of controls around there. So you can really quickly automate adding your latest news posts or links to other pages in here using a block like that. And another one that's pretty useful too is the icon list. So if we come over to here, it will be down here somewhere. Icon list, there it is. Okay, so here's my first icon. Don't need that. Second icon. Third icon. So we can run a list down the page like this. Now with each individual icon I've got here, I can control whether it's an image or an icon that prefixes it. I've got a bunch of different ones I can choose from here. We can make them links or not. Control some colors and bits and pieces like that. And each of these things can have its own icon as well. They don't all need to be the same. So if I was going to control that, and I was controlling individual icons there before, if I come back to icon list, I've then got a different set of controls over here in terms of how it's laid out. Some spacing, some alignment, and bits and pieces like that. So that's just a handful of examples of some other blocks that you can add. As you can see, there's lots and lots and lots that I'm not going to run through all today. Lots of different kinds of of blocks that you could add to this page to help fill out the design. And this is just one plugin. So Atomic Blocks is a very good one. Cadence Blocks is another good one. They all do different things and all have their own strengths and weaknesses. And depending on what you're trying to do, it's just a case of installing the plugin and you have these available to you to then lay out your page a bit more. All right, so finally, we've been through basically everything that I want to run through today. Finally, I'll just a couple of other things up here. So that fella there will show and hide that. Under here, we've got some options in terms of whether we display a top toolbar, which if I click that, we can see how that's selected. Top toolbar will just move those controls to the top of the screen all the time. Spotlight mode will let you focus on a single block at a time. You can see how the others are sort of grayed out unless I click it. I don't tend to use that too much. Code editor is there if you need to jump into that sort of thing, which you probably won't. Now, we mentioned before we made a reusable block. I can manage all my reusable blocks from there. Yes, I don't want to save those changes. So that's my 3 options block. I could edit that block from there if I wished. And the block manager itself, after you install a few block plugins, you will find that this list will be really, really long and you'll get lost trying to find what you're looking for. So if you want to do a bit of tidying up, you can untick some blocks that you don't think you're ever going to use. You know, whichever ones you want to untick. And then when you click the plus up here to display your block list, you're only then going to be displaying the blocks that you're actually using at the time. So that's an option there if you wanted to just do a bit of housekeeping and tidying up. That's all tucked away under this menu up here. All right, so in summary, with this new editor, although it can be a bit confusing and overwhelming to start off with, it does give you a lot more control. Once upon a time, you basically had a rectangle in the middle was all you could really deal with, and a lot of things were governed by the theme. That's not really the case anymore. On each page that you're editing, you have a lot of flexibility, and if you're trying to do something that isn't there, there's lots and lots of plugins that give you additional block libraries you can play with. The other advantage is it's a lot more visual than it used to be. You can get a pretty good idea of what you're looking at from the editing screen rather than have to put bits and pieces in and then go and look at the page just to double check that it came out okay. It's still a good practice to do it, but what you're seeing here is a much more literal representation of what you're going to see on the front end anyway. And a lot of these newer themes like Astra Pro that I'm using here, if I just jump out of full screen mode so I can go view page, they do a pretty good job of getting out of the way. So older themes would try and control the way the site looked a lot, and if you wanted to do something, often the theme would say no. But something like Astra Pro, and there are others out there as well, they set up the basics, so your fonts and your colors and your logo and some overall settings for the site. But then they get out of the way and let the blocks editor in WordPress do its thing. Which basically means you can probably get to the point down the track of doing a redesign of your site and not having to actually change the theme. You could probably do a lot of it within the blocks editor itself, using patterns and repeating blocks to cut down on your workload. So that's a bit of an overview of the new blocks editor. Really powerful, really useful, not too scary. Get in and have a play and kick the tires. But if you've got a version of WordPress and a theme that was designed on a version of WordPress prior to 5, you'll all of a sudden have a lot more control with an upgrade. It's not like a minor upgrade where you hardly notice anything different. Moving to a WordPress 5 compatible theme with this blocks editor gives you a whole lot more control than you used to have. That's it from me today. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time. All right, just before you go, YouTube seems to think that one of these videos might be interesting to you, and don't forget you can hit the subscribe link over here somewhere, wherever it happens to be. Thanks for your support. See you next time.